Welcome back to Insights provided by Deloitte on Federal News Radio. I'm Francis Rose, and my guest is Deborah Golden, Federal Cyber Risk Services Leader at Deloitte. We're talking about the vigilant part of our discussion, and I'd like you to define that term, describe what it means in a cyber context, Deborah.
For us, vigilant means making sure that you are vigilant in your ability to not only identify assets, whether they be critical or non-critical assets, and to determine what types of structures you need to put in place to secure those from both a identification all the way through to a proactive and predictive mechanism to monitor for them.
How are the agencies and organizations, whether public sector or private sector, using data effectively to know what's going on in their networks, and how are they analyzing the data that they get?
I think one of the first critical steps is actually understanding the data and understanding the broad array of data that is required. So it's no longer just looking at the IT asset, it's understanding the different types of threats that may be coming into an organization and how they may be coming in. And so with today's day and age, modernization of technology, mobile devices, medical devices, the ways in which our adversaries can gain access is actually growing. And so understanding what data you need from those types of information, as well as being able to identify the different types of threats, either internal or external. So currently, we're not just worried about what's inside the four walls of the agency or the organization. It's the external individuals who either are granted rights and access to gain into the system, or those that are not granted that access to gain entry into the system.
So one of the easiest ways for somebody to get into a network is to have somebody inside the network help them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's on purpose, and sometimes it's somebody does something that they didn't know they were doing, but they shouldn't have done. Does this become a lowest common denominator discussion, that the least trained person or the least aware person on someone's network is going to be potentially the source of greatest risk?
I think some of it is understanding what is that risk, right? And so you could look at it and say, if there's developer access in production, that's a high risk area. If there's privileged access through system administrators and in operations and maintenance capacity, that's a high risk area. So I do think that there is a vulnerability there with the access that these people have been granted into these systems. And so therefore, I do think it is important to understand these threats and then figure out what types of protection you need to put around the different types of threats, realizing that an insider threat could be very different than some of the external threats that are coming into an organization.
And the type of insider threat could be different too. If it's somebody who wants to do damage to the organization, that's a different threat and a different level of scrutiny that threat deserves, as opposed to somebody who just sticks a thumb drive in a computer they shouldn't. Is that right?
That's correct. And again, understanding the different types of threats inside an organization. So it's not just the employee anymore. It's the employee, it's the contractor. It could be medical students. It could be part-time, full-time, working inside the building, not working inside the building. And so the types of individuals that are gaining access to a system are very different than they used to be as well.
Two components that Deloitte writes about and talks about regarding that: analytics and innovation. Let's talk about the analytics piece first. We have touched on it already, but in a little more detail. Taking that data that you get about what's going on in your network, looking at it. What's kind of the state of the art of the tools that are available to do that, and how much awareness can you really gain? How much transparency can you gain into your network as a whole?
I think part of it is being able to be predictive versus reactive. And I think we've seen a lot of organizations that typically have been reactive. They can react to the incident after it's happened. And so the ability to leverage data and analytics makes organizations be able to be more aware of the data so that they can be looking for trends and algorithms and indicators that would be a risk indicator, if you will, to say, here's something that maybe you need to pay attention to based on the indicators that you've defined for your specific agency or organization. And so data and analytics can help you, again, be more predictive in trying to look at different types of actions and identities that are gaining access into your system.
In just a moment to talk about innovation. Agencies say all the time, we want an innovative solution, but they don't necessarily know what that is. They depend on companies like Deloitte to provide those. How do you go about demonstrating that what you have to demonstrate to an agency is really is innovative, something they haven't seen?
Well, I think part of it is also looking at it across the board. So not just looking at it as technology innovation or analytical innovation. How are you looking at the human aspect of it? How are you taking apart a person's human behavior and understanding, is a behavior something that would be a risk or an indicator of that risk? And so I think we provide not only demonstrable capability for proof of concepts, actual clients providing these types of services that we are doing today, but also integrating that into the human aspect, the process aspect, and also the technology.
This is Insights provided by Deloitte. Deborah Golden of Deloitte, my guest. I'm Francis Rose on Federal News Radio.